Namaste. How to assess attainment of course learning outcomes is the topic of this lecture. In the outcome based education framework, the focus on assessment of student learning outcome is very important. How much student is able to demonstrate in terms of knowledge, skill set, and the attitude is extremely important in the sustainable development, sustainable growth, and sustainable career of a graduate. So, how do we assess, how do we measure whether there has been attainment of the course learning outcomes or not? We have seen in our previous lectures that course outcomes can be mapped with the program outcomes, course outcomes can be mapped with the course objectives, and so on. We can evaluate the number of courses using a number of assessment tools, direct or indirect. What is important is whether the student is able to demonstrate successfully, whether the course learning outcomes or student learning outcomes are attained or not. So let's understand. As we know that course outcome, it comes after program outcome, and then if you go deeper. So the course outcomes comprise of a number of lesson outcomes. We know that every course has certain number of lessons, certain number of lectures. So if you go up to that level, that associate each lecture with certain outcome, that is going to be a wonderful thing, I can tell you. If you can connect, if you can associate it, if you can associate learning outcome, that is lesson outcome, to some course outcome, then course outcome to program outcome to program objectives, and program objectives to vision and mission statement. And if you can really assess this connection and mapping very genuinely with the help of pragmatic assessment tools, attainment will be there. So, as we know that course outcomes are measured with the help of syllabus, conducting the syllabus, completing the syllabus, continuing evaluation. Evaluation may be internal or external, setting up a question paper, what kind of question paper is being said, that is also important. Then how do we evaluate, and the result. But in the assessment, there may be number of components. We know that. Say the assessment is used to measure the student learning, and student learning requires students to demonstrate their knowledge and skills through tangible, visible, and self-explanatory evidence. What is important is your outcome which is coming is tangible, is visible. We can see that the student is demonstrating that skill set. Student is demonstrating that knowledge, and we must have evidence the student is joining the industry, and the industry and the employers, they are giving us feedback. The students of your institute, the graduates of your institute are doing wonders, doing brilliantly in the industry. Whatever task has been assigned, they are doing in the great manner. So this is one example I'm telling you. So self-explanatory explanatory evidence, tangible outcome, visible results, visible evidence will tell us whether the students are actually demonstrating their learning outcomes or not. Students are demonstrating their learning outcomes, which indicates that there has been definitely attainment of the course outcomes and the program outcome, because we know that program outcome comprises of a number of course outcomes. So as we know about the assessment tools which are used to assess a particular course are of two types: direct tools and indirect tools. We have already discussed about this in our previous lecture. Direct tools include class test, quizzes, assignment, Viva OC, tutorials, end semester, mid semester examination, minor project, major project, workshop, seminar, winter school, summer school, and so on. So these are the internal part of components of your assessment. Whereas and these are the main examples. You may have some more components. You may have some other components which are similar to these components you can have with certain weightage. Indirect tools include exit survey, alumni feedback, curriculum feedback, employer survey, parents feedback, and so on. So in this manner, you can use direct as well as indirect. And what is the advantage of using a number of tools? If you use more number of methods, more number of tools, what happens? It provides the students the opportunity to demonstrate learning in an alternative way. Suppose you believe that you want to assess students' critical thinking. And in one of the tools, say in the direct tool, the student is not actually, demonstrating that skill set. And you believe that no, he lacks in critical thinking. But there might be some other tool, there might be some other method in which you can clearly see that his critical thinking is visible, and that too there is an evidence where he is performing very well in a particular method. So if you include more number of methods, you can in the alternative manner you can see the different outcomes which are exhibited and demonstrated by these students. It's not always possible. I'm not saying that if you go to other method the student will demonstrate that outcome, but this is possible that in some other method student may perform well and there and in a particular domain, probably in terms of skill set. So you can say that multiple methods are always useful. And since this picture is related to outcome based education, where you have student learning outcomes, program course contents are delivered, then teaching learning strategies, teaching learning pedagogies. I have been telling you in right from the previous lectures that teaching learning pedagogies, teaching learning mechanisms play a significant role in the attainment of course learning outcomes. Student learning activities, what kind of learning activities, self-learning activities, is there any environment, such ambience is there that allows the students for the self-learning mode? That is equally important. That is very important. And then assessment and feedback, student learning, and then assessment has to be there continuously. Review, assessment, and feedback. If there is any need of revising the course learning outcome, student learning outcome, that could be done. Whatever has been anticipated, if it is not measurable, we have seen that all outcomes are need to be smart outcomes, specific, measurable, result oriented, time bound, and so on. So if you believe that some outcome is extremely difficult to achieve, difficult to attain, then you have to analyze that what is wrong in it and you can accordingly revise it. So the level of attainment and the condition of attainment. Level of attainment or achievement is used to identify how proficient students are in a task. If you assign a task to the student, his proficiency level, his expertise level, his level of mastery is indicated by the level of attainment. Condition of performance identifies if students are only performing this outcome in a specific context. So in a particular task some specific context is there, problem solving ability you want to evaluate in a task, and you have put a condition that we want to actually test the problem solving ability in a particular task. So that is the condition of performance. Sorry. So intended learning outcomes are there. We have seen that there are two types of assessment, formative assessment and summative. I mean, we can use direct and indirect assessment tools under both the categories, formative and summative. In our previous lectures, we have seen that summative assessment is not considered as a good approach. It's not considered as a better one. Formative is always good because at every interval, at interval of either 1 week, 2 weeks, you assess and you evaluate the students' performance regularly using certain tools and quizzes. So these are the methods, and of course, teaching learning activities and pedagogies. So teaching learning pedagogies, the assessment methods, they all contribute in order to achieve and attain intended learning outcomes. And when we say the students are demonstrating intended learning outcomes, we have been, emphasizing on three terms: knowledge, skill, and values. What is the knowledge the student has acquired? What skill set he has developed? And what are the values which he is observing, he is demonstrating? So values and attitudes are equally important. So review and improvement is very important, that when we define the measurable learning outcome, we have to provide the instruction, we have to deliver the lectures, course curriculum, teaching learning materials, then we have to assess the learning, measure and collect the data. We have to involve a number of feedback from alumni, employer, parents, and so on, industries, so that we'll find out our students after passing out how they are performing in the industry. When we are talking about course outcome, after doing a course, going to other course or doing some project where such knowledge is needed, how he is using that knowledge acquired from the course, and what kind of specific skill set he has developed after doing a course. So that assessment is needed. The review and interpret an assessment of evidence. So whatever evidence is there, with the help of assessment tools you have created, that needs to be interpreted, reviewed carefully, and then assessment will give some reflection. Some improvement is either needed in the teaching learning methodology, improvement is needed in assessment tool, improvement in teaching, improvement is needed in some other factor. So you can definitely think on improving any of the components, teaching learning pedagogies, resources, the approaches, and so on, the student learning ambience, the self learning, the tools which you are providing them, any of them can be modified, and you can again assess whether you are able to actually attain the outcome or not. If it is still not possible, then you can think of bringing all the stakeholders and thinking of the modifying your learning outcome, to some extent. So how do we assess a course? That is very important. We can use either direct assessment or indirect assessment. These are some examples, as I mentioned, direct assessment tools like class test, quiz, assignment, Viva. So for all the students, we prepare in this manner only. For every student, we assign some percentage of, marks to class test, some percentage of weightage we give to assignment, some weightage is given to Viva, some weightage is given to project, some weightage is given to exit survey. But all the tools may not be required for all the courses in any these. Therefore I'm saying these are the examples. So there may be some indirect tools which are involved, there may be some direct tools which are involved, and that varies from course to course. This is a the impact of flexible learning, flexible teaching learning. So some tools will be there, and we generally assess the students performing in this manner. So how do we assess? What is the performance, how much percentage he got, how much there may be rubrics, that the rubrics may be your expected satisfaction is 10, so out of 10 whether the student got 9, 8, 7, something like that. So you can feel all these values, and then create the course assessment, that in these assessment components how the student is performing. Now what is important when we are talking about attainment, we have to also map quiz component with the COs. In a particular quiz, we are talking about one quiz only. So say in a one quiz or one test or any other assignment, assessment tool, say presentation is quiz component, project elective is a quiz component, assignment is one component, quiz one is a one component. So all these components are actually being mapped with any of the course outcomes. Definitely, if you are involving the presentation as an assessment tool, it must be aligning to some course outcome. Some course outcome must be highlighting on the students will be able to communicate very effectively. So communication skill is being delivered, communication skill is being demonstrated with the help of presentation. So all these quiz components, all these assessment components will be directly connected with some course outcome. So this is how you have to slowly, each student has to be evaluated in terms of all the components. Each component has to be evaluated in terms of course outcome. That student has done, 90%, has scored 9 out of 10 in presentation. And this is being mapped with course outcome 4, which is talking about developing a communication skill. So you can say that in that student, the attainment is 90%, 9 out of 10. So it is 90% in terms of presentation skill. So in this manner, this process is extensive process. For every student, you have to analyze it. Students learning attainment. How do we evaluate the learning attainment of students? For every student, we'll use some tool like analytical skill, critical thinking, mathematical model, presentation skill, ethical issues, self-learning, teamwork. So in a particular quiz, so every quiz have number of components. All the quizzes might not have all the components. Other quiz may have some different components. So say the quiz one has these components. So in quiz one, the student one, how much he demonstrated in terms of analytical skill. how much he demonstrated in terms of critical thinking, how much he could do in terms of mathematical knowledge, how much he could do in presentation skill. Again, there will be a rubric, make, you can say excellent, average, good, below average, poor, something like that. Or you can say 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10. And this is how you will try to understand every student is able to develop how much of these skill sets, which are the components of this particular assessment tool or this particular quiz. And this is how one can evaluate. Now, what is important is, I was telling you in the beginning, as we know that every course has a number of lectures, number of lessons. So those lectures also must have, some learning outcomes. So every lesson will have some learning outcome, and all the lectures we are delivering to complete a topic, those lectures must be aligned with those learning outcomes. So that is also very important. And then those learning outcomes which have been associated with some lectures need to be aligned with the course outcome. As we correlate course outcome with the program outcome, in the similar manner, the topic level outcome or the lecture level outcome, the lesson level outcome has to be mapped with course outcome. Course outcome is, say, developing critical thinking, and one of the learning outcome LO3 is also helping the student to develop critical thinking. How much? Whether 9 by 10 or 7 by 10 or 6 by 10, based on the performance of a student. So you can also create a map for mapping between the lesson outcomes and course outcomes. Then finally, we always, come to the point where we always map course outcomes with the program outcomes. Say course outcome 1 is mapped with program outcome 3. Say course outcome is talking about, mathematical knowledge, and program outcome is talking about mathematical knowledge. And say in the course outcome, student is able to develop some mathematical knowledge, demonstrate some mathematical knowledge. So you can write here X, or you can also quantify this. How much? Whether it is 1 by 5 or 2 by 5 or 3 by 5. What method of assessment was used to evaluate this course outcome? What were the skill set on the cognitive level, the critical thinking, the learning abilities, self-learning, understanding, comprehension. What was the specific ability associated that you wanted to observe in the student while assessing the course outcome? So these tables, which I have been, talking about, these tables I have created as the template, so that we can, create these mapping tables, these mapping matrices for all our courses. The objective is all the course outcomes have to be mapped with program outcomes pragmatically. Then only we'll say that the course outcomes are attained. When you find, strong correlation between course outcome and program outcomes. The course outcomes which are included in different courses are strongly are aligning to the program outcomes which have been articulated for a program under which you have a number of courses. And the program outcomes, we know that they are all articulated, they are all formulated on the basis of graduate attributes. Graduate attributes are the attributes which we believe that the graduate is supposed to demonstrate or exhibit these characteristics. And then the program outcomes are finally mapped with the program educational objectives. Program educational objectives are written on the basis of vision and mission statement. So the finally the comment on the course learning outcome attainment is, we have to use our teaching learning pedagogies very sincerely. We have to do review regularly. We have to do assessment very sincerely using direct and indirect assessment too. Based on assessment, we have to create a number of matrices. First, create a matrix that indicates performance of all the students in all the different assessment tools. And then each assessment tool will have a number of components. Those components, how they are being mapped with the learning outcomes or the course outcomes. Each course has a number of lectures, how a particular lecture is contributing to the course outcome. So the mapping between lesson outcome and the course outcome. We can also say that the mapping between topic outcome and the course outcome. And finally, we evaluate the mapping between course outcome and program outcome. And when we find that here all, the values, wherever we find the mapping between course outcome and program outcome, the values are all, say 4 by 5, 4 by 5. So we can say that, yeah, 4 by 5 means 80% of attainment is there in the course outcome, and that is actually aligning with the program outcome, what was anticipated from the students to be demonstrated at the end of completing a program. So I hope this particular discussion on the attainment of course outcomes would help all those who are working in the the quality education evaluation in terms of assessment and attainment of student learning outcomes. Thank you.